Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima. I want to talk to you for a little bit about making great demos. This is something that I've wanted to do for some time because I've played something along the lines of 200 demos for the individual Steam demo things that they've had going on over the past few months, whether it be the Steam Game Festival or Steam Next Fest. And I absolutely love these events, and I play a ton of demos on them, but some of these demos are always just really short of the mark, and I'm always disappointed when they are, because I feel like with the right sort of guidance, a lot of these demos with a lot of potentially really good games behind them could get a lot more traction and a lot more playability with just a few simple tweaks. So I've got here a list of 5 rules that any demo maker should follow in order to make a really good demo, whether it be for one of these events or for something completely different. With that said, I do have a sneaky rule 0 here, just to give people a little bit of advice. Use Steam's features. Use them. Steam has these absolutely fantastic 4-second mini trailers that get used as promotional material whenever you end up on the front page of the Steam Next Fest event that show off just a little bit of a trailer. And I don't know if you can do this specifically. I don't know if you can specifically upload a 5-second clip to one of these pages, but I feel like that getting this right is really important, because if someone can get a really good idea of what your entire game entails, it might be more appealing. I saw a pretty decent one on the front page of Steam just before I went to record this. It was a game called Wildermyth, that's it. And it's got this neat storybook style. It's got moving across locations. It's got tactical combat with an obvious grid. And it shows all of them off within about 4 seconds. And that's a pretty good example of one. But then I go and look at the one for Death Stranding, which appears to be nothing related to the absolute majority of the game, which is transporting packages. It appears to be setting up for combat encounters, which is really bizarre because it doesn't show off what 90 to 99% of the game is going to be, and that's kind of disappointing. And then you've got games that do nothing but show off how good they look and what their effects are like, and not any actual gameplay, like this one here, Swords of Legends Online. So it's all relative to what your game is doing and what you're capable of showing off in that 4 seconds, but you really need to take advantage of that. And it's also worth noting that people like me don't even go through the Steam Next Fest page. They go to the Steam search, they sort by release date, they filter out everything by demos, and they just check out all of the demos that are on the date of the event and 1 or 2 days around. So I'll be looking through and I'll be looking at the 4 screenshots, for example, just having a look at what the game is there, and making sure that those screenshots are right too is also quite important. So yeah, as I was saying, make sure you take advantage of those Steam abilities, because your first impression from me having to go through 300 demos or 400, it was 600 in the last one as of this recording. So yeah, you need to really take advantage of them, because if I look at these screenshots and think this doesn't look even remotely impressive, I'm going to skip right over your demo. If it's not even remotely representative of what the gameplay is going to be, I'm going to skip right over your demo. So yeah, make sure that that's all set up before it goes off. With that said, let's get to the 5 actual rules now. Rule 1, no strings attached, because apparently this is something you need to tell demo makers these days. I've seen a couple of demos that do this, not all of them, but it's definitely something that'll turn me off your demo immediately. The one I can think of was something like Aeon Drive, where as soon as you started up the game, it brought up a little prompt that said, if you sign up to our newsletter, we'll give you a demo with more levels. And this infuriates me, because a demo is supposed to be no strings attached. I don't want to have to sign up to a newsletter. I don't want to have to wishlist you. I don't want to have to do anything. These are all things that I should be doing of my own accord, and trying to make me do these in order to get more content for your demo is the worst thing imaginable to me when it comes to demos. So yeah, don't do this. If I want to subscribe to your newsletter, if I want to add your game to my wishlist, if I want to do something along those lines, I will do it of my own accord. Don't make me do something along the lines of lock it out. lock content out and make me do that if I want to see everything that your demo has got to offer. That is an awful idea, and you should be shot into the surface of the sun if you try this crap. Anyway, that's obvious. Rule number 2, the 1 minute start time rule. Because a lot of these demos have things like unskippable cutscenes, or a lot of tutorials, or a bunch of other things along these lines. If I'm not in and playing your game, if I'm not in the thick of it, if I'm not engaging with your main mechanics in 1 minute after starting your demo up, I'm probably going to get bored and move on to the next game because I've got better things to do. You need to get me into the meat and potatoes of what your game is good at very quickly and without much in the way of interruptions. And my favorite example of this is a game called Nuke Zone. It made an absolutely fantastic demo for this rule in particular. So when you start it up, it displays all the controls on the left side of the screen. It displays newsletter, wish list, website link on the right side, and it's got a settings button down the bottom, which opens up a settings menu with like 5 settings. So there's not much to customize, which you might argue is not exactly a good thing for a demo, but at the same time it's a demo, so just, you know, you can get away with the bare minimum as long as your game doesn't run like absolute garbage. And right down the bottom in the middle is a start button, and when you click it, it drops you straight into the level. Like, no bullshit, that's it. Total time to gameplay is something like 20 to 30 seconds, including initial loading time, which is, you know, there's not much you can do about that. People are going to be playing on different storage mediums. You just have to work around that. But yeah, perfect example of the 1 minute start time rule being put to its best effect. There you go. Rule 3 is the vertical slice rule. For those of you who aren't familiar with game terminology, especially in the development side of things, the vertical slice is what it refers to when you have a certain portion of your game, whether it be one level, or one set of puzzles, or one mission, which is comprised of a bunch of smaller levels. Basically just a small part of your game that you can develop and polish and say, this is the game, this is how I want it to flow, this is how I want the mechanics to work, this is how I want everything to just kind of come together, this is what I want my game to look like across the entirety of the game. This is usually used in game development as a sort of few months in, once your pitch has been accepted, you send this to a publisher and say, this is what my game is going to be like, and that's also exactly what you want your players to feel. The rough rule is around 33% of the way through the game. You want a place in your game where all your mechanics have been introduced and are starting to be used and working together. You want a little bit of story, but not too much. You don't want people to be spoiled on your story right off the bat. And you want everything just to be in a general state where, again, people can play this and be like, oh, this is what the entire game is going to be like. You don't want to have to weigh them down with tutorials. You don't want to have to weigh them down with too much in the way of just practice levels. You want people to be able to just jump in, see what your game is like from just one particular section of it, and it needs to be far enough in that everything is starting to work and come together, at the very least. This doesn't have to be 33%, but that's usually where it roughly turns out to be for most titles. So, yes, this is what you want your people to be playing. This is what you want your audience to be playing. This is what you want them to think, okay, this is what my game's going to be like. If you can get that right, that's usually a good sign of a demo. Now, you might have noticed when I was talking about the vertical slice rule that I didn't really touch on difficulty, because there are games that can be incredibly difficult if you just get dropped right into a vertical slice position where it's like 1/3 of the way through the game or something along those lines. And that's because it actually ties into Rule 4, which is replayability is awesome. Because there are 3 ways that you can encourage replayability of your demo. One is that the game is quite difficult, enough that the player might need a second go through to give it another try, and I generally approve of not having any tutorials. Just drop me in and see what I can do. This only works for some genres. I will admit this, but for the genres where it does work, giving me the opportunity to experiment and learn about the mechanics on my own, again, putting into the 1 minute start time, it means that I can examine the mechanics myself. I can play around with the mechanics myself and see if I can get a good grasp on things. And then when I just getting to the point where I'm thinking, all right, I'm starting to learn what's going on, I'm starting to get what's going on here, I either die or the demo ends. And I think to myself, I can do that better. I can see what this looks like from a more experienced position, and I go through the demo again. I have a better time. I enjoy the game more, and that might encourage me to buy the game on Steam. Because I just think to myself, yeah, I'm actually enjoying this now that I understand how the big side of it works, and I got the opportunity to experience that and figure it out for myself. This generally works great. And there are a lot of demos in the past, really good demos, that have been like, okay, I'm dropping you in with nothing, figure this out yourself, and they have come out great as a result. There are also two other ways that you can encourage replayability. Speedruns are one, and there was this one game from the previous Steam Demo Derby, Steam Next Fest, Steam Game Festival. I call them Demo Derbies on this channel, but yeah. There was one game from the previous Steam event where it was a speedrun challenge, where if you got through the game faster than like everyone else, the top 5 people would get a free Steam copy. So the people who were really enjoying the game and were giving it another go and another go and another go actually had something to strive for, and that's an absolutely brilliant way to go about it. It's not like you can't just roll this back and have it just be a speedrun challenge with a leaderboard, but that's still a really good idea for encouraging replayability of your demo, and if you want to give people the opportunity to do that, you should, because it's a reason to give your demo another try, and it might convince them that, yeah, I actually really like this game, I'm going to buy it on Steam. And then, of course, you've got roguelikes, which can mix in different elements, different mechanics, and different everything, to the point where different runs can be different every single time. And that means that the demo is worth more because people can play through multiple times and get a better idea of how the game handles. And even then you can do something a little sneaky, like sneak in an extra mechanic or two every time they finish the demo, so that they're slowly building up to what the game is really truly like on the 3rd or 4th play. And when you've got them that hooked into you, you can almost guarantee a sale. Or at the very least you can say, oh, I'm going to add you to my wish list. And to be fair, being added to the wish list is actually really important on Steam these days, so don't discount the power of someone liking your demo enough to get on a wish list. So yeah, replayability is awesome. If you can mix together at least one of these elements, or even all 3 if you're going in that direction, you will get yourself people playing your demo over and over and over again, and they will be way more likely to buy your game as a result. And finally, Rule 5. Polish is everything. And I mean this quite literally, because there are multiple games where the screenshots have looked decent, the mini trailer has looked decent, and then I've booted it up, and there's just been a bunch of really out of place stuff, a bunch of really bad bugs, and it's just been like, yeah, I don't want to play this anymore. Because things like the default Unity font are incredibly ugly, and it seems to show like no effort has been put into making this demo ready for prime time in the public eye. There are things like default configuration menus for Unity, which can be annoyingly hard to use and don't really actually give you the information that you need. That can be a bit of a pain. There are things like, say, the Unity launcher that comes up, the rectangle that tells you like what monitor, what resolution, and what graphics quality you want. Those are okay as long as they're not too over the top. And there are just like other things like obvious bugs that have come up, or missing resources, or things that are just obviously blatantly placeholder that just make your game look way less professional and are less likely to translate through to a wish listing or a sale. Make sure you polish your game. Make sure you go through at least the hoops to make it remotely presentable without having too many things that stick out too much. Otherwise, things are just gonna go really roughly for you when people actually start playing your demo. And might I add a rule 6 to this? Although this isn't, again, this is technically a Steam Next Fest thing. Don't put out multiplayer only demos during the Steam Next Fest. Because people are going to have like 80 demos to play, and you are going to be incredibly lucky if you get even a slightly sustained player base on your demo. I've ended up trying to play a couple of multiplayer-only demos, and I've never found anybody. So just, yeah, don't do that. Have a separate beta event or something like that, but don't do it in the middle of the Steam Next Fest. Your popularity is just going to fall off a cliff. But yeah, those are my 7 rules, technically, for having a good demo. Rule 0, use Steam's abilities to your advantage. Have good screenshots, have representative mini trailers, and just don't try to stand out a little bit from the pack of games that will not be doing that. Rule 1, don't attach any strings. Don't make me sign up to a newsletter to get more content. Don't make me do anything else along those lines in order to actually play your demo. Your demo should be standalone, your demo should be easy to access, and your demo should just be its own thing. I shouldn't have to do anything else to have to play it. Rule 2, if I'm not into the meat and potatoes of your game within 1 minute, I'm probably going to get bored and move on to the next demo, because a good demo knows that you should be able to just drop straight into what makes your game good and just go with it. I have played way too many demos where I've had to spend 5 minutes with endless tutorials and endless talking boxes instead of actually playing what makes your game good. This also ties into the vertical slice rule, which is rule 3, where you have to pick a certain point in your game roughly 1/3 of the way through, where all your mechanics are coming together, all your tutorials are done, and the player has an opportunity to really see how the game is going to come together when they decide to pick it up and play through it. Because the majority of the game is going to be past this point, where all the mechanics are introduced and everything is going to start coming together, unless your game's kind of badly designed. So yes, make sure that you're using a vertical slice and not something like a tutorial section that'll take too long to get through, a la Rule 2. Rule 4, make your game as replayable as possible. Have it be hard enough to encourage an extra replay. Have like a speedrunning challenge or something along those lines to convince people to get through again faster and faster and faster. And if you're a roguelike, make sure you really take advantage of that. Really seed that random generation. Add in new mechanics every couple of rounds if you can to make sure that the replayability stays strong, because the more times you can convince someone to replay your demo, the more likely they are to wishlist or buy your game outright. And rule 5, polishes everything. Make sure you get rid of like default fonts and default configuration screens. Make sure that there aren't any glaring bugs. There are minor ones. There are ones you aren't going to catch, but make sure you're not leaving the really obvious one, where if you turn it down a corridor 5 seconds into the demo, the game just crashes. Make sure those are all gone, and make sure it's just presentable. Because this is going to be people's first impressions of your demo, and you're probably going to get more eyes on your demo here than you will during your game's launch, most likely. So just be careful of that. And of course, rule 6, which I just added on the end, don't do multiplayer demos during the Steam Next Fest. You're never going to have a good base. If you're playing like a multiplayer game, if that's your game, have AI bots. For God's sake, have AI bots. So yeah, that's it. I've wanted to make this video for a while, and hopefully at least one independent dev will see this and think, okay, I've got a good idea of how to construct my demo. I'm going to make a good demo. With that said, this has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.